As a result, only the order maintained by the Yakuza were lost. And now even ordinary young students who are supposed to be the future of Japan have become involved in crime. 皆さんこんにちは and welcome to Let's Ask Shogo. Yakuza are an iconic figure of Japan, probably as famous as samurai and geisha. Although they are very famous in many animes and movies, they are actual Japanese gangs that are still active in Japan today. However, did you know that Yakuza are actually disappearing in Japan? So today, I will explain what Yakuza are in the first place, and why the Yakuza groups are losing their authority today. Also, at the end of the video, I will talk about the new gang groups that are starting to gain more power recently. This video will help you to learn more about the real Yakuza that are not the characters that show up in dramas, and what their situation is like today. If your image of Yakuza changed after watching this video, please let me know in the comments. In this channel, you can take a closer look at Japanese traditional culture, tips on traveling to Kyoto, and social problems in Japan. So learners and lovers of Japanese language and culture, be sure to subscribe to enjoy more content. それでは本日も参りましょう。First, let me start by talking about the history of Yakuza. The origins of the Yakuza can be traced back to the Edo period, the last era when the samurais existed. This period was very peaceful with hardly any wars for more than 2 centuries. But that was because the control of the Tokugawa shogunate, the samurai government, was very strict and thorough. If any samurai clan were to show even the slightest sign of rebellion or did not obey their orders, all their property and names will be taken away by the government. Some of the people who have lost their status and jobs became bakuto, who engaged in the gambling business, or tekiya, who set up street vendors at shrines and temples during festivals. These organizations often fought each other for the right to do business in certain lands. And through these battles, they became more and more violent and powerful. It is said that these outlaws eventually became Yakuza. After the end of World War II, the Yakuza started to grow rapidly by running black markets when supplies were scarce. And they would often take money from local residents as a security fee for maintaining public order instead of the non-functioning police organizations. From here, as Japan underwent the 19 years of the period of high economic growth, the golden age of the Yakuza arrived. The period of high economic growth from 1954 to 1973 was caused by many factors like the Tokyo Olympics in 1964 and the Osaka World Expo in 1970. How Japan quickly recovered from all its damages caused by the wars was called the Japanese miracle by the world. For example, you might have heard that Japanese cars were once very popular all around the world. But this was also because of this economic boom period. During this time, in addition to acquiring funds from the traditional business, such as drugs and prostitution, they also expanded their activities to include legitimate economic activities. In particular, they began to engage in the financial and real estate markets and became deeply rooted in politics and economy. The rich and powerful Yakuza until the 1990s might be your image of them through drama and movies. So, to make a long story short, since the Edo period, Yakuza groups have always functioned as a receptacle for the misfits and the poor. And they were an organization that gave those who society would call a failure or dropout a chance to succeed in life through violence and organized crimes. Also, in many cases, their violent and outlaw powers were socially necessary. However, how about today? Why is the once glorious history of the Yakuza now considered to be over? Let's take a look at the next chapter to find out. In order to understand why Yakuza are disappearing from Japanese society, we need to move a little further into their history. Japan's economic growth in the latter half of the 20th century, when the Yakuza flourished, naturally did not last forever. In 1991, the miraculous rise in asset prices and land prices came to a complete halt. This event, known as the Bubble Hokai, bubble burst in Japan, marked the beginning of a long period of economic stagnation and worsening employment conditions that lingers on to this day. I've talked about the 30-year-long deflation that is still continuing in one of my past videos. So if you're interested, I hope you can take a look and learn more about how harmful it is to our society. Until the bubble burst, Yakuza were thought of as a necessary evil, and there were corporations and politicians who were willing to ignore the law to forcefully borrow money, raise land, and collect debts using the Yakuza in order to financially grow rapidly. However, once the economic growth stopped, companies and individuals started to act more conservatively, and the Yakuza quickly changed from being a necessary evil to be recognized as a social evil. The biggest cause of the Yakuza's loss of power was the anti-gangster law that was enacted in 1992. The anti-gangster law regulated almost all the activities that the Yakuza used to do as business in the past. Due to this law, the members of the Yakuza cannot open up bank accounts or make any kinds of contracts. For example, when you rent a house in Japan, you are required to write a pledge saying, "I am not a member, nor do I have any connections with the Yakuza." But this was only after this law came into effect. In order to eliminate the Yakuza, not only the police force, but society as a whole worked together, and the anti-gangster law was strengthened more and more. Finally, in 2011, this law was strengthened to the point where anyone who gets in contact with Yakuza is a criminal. When I was a student, on my way or coming home from school, I often saw posters on the streets that said, "It is a crime to associate with the Yakuza." Even today, celebrities who unintentionally get involved with antisocial groups are often bashed by society and forced to suspend their activities. The Yamaguchi-gumi, a representative of the Yakuza that you may have heard of, finally split into 3 groups in 2017 after a series of internal conflicts due to the whole group becoming weak. Compared to their glory days until the end of the 1990s, the overall number of Yakuza members is said to have shrunk to 1/6 and the scale of business to 1/20. Many people are lamenting that the weakened Yakuza have become nothing more than a group of criminals with no shred of honor, who cheat the elderly and apply violence on civilians to earn money. There is little chance of the Yakuza gaining power again from here, and many experts say that the history of Yakuza is over. The glorious Yakuza that we imagine from watching dramas and movies are nowhere to be found. So, has the elimination of the Yakuza brought peace to Japanese society? The answer is actually no. Many people say that it might have had the opposite effect. But why? Let's talk about that in the final chapter. Just like how the war against drugs created more drug dealers, the elimination of the Yakuza only led to the dissolution of the Yakuza organizational form, but expanded of crimes such as drugs, fraud, and prostitution. The new gang groups that have emerged to replace the Yakuza are called hangure. They are criminals who do not work in a tightly organized group, but rather work just for earning money, cooperating and separating repeatedly depending on each case. They are not just the ex-Yakuza members who are evil-looking criminals, as you might imagine, but also ordinary college students who have been arrested for their crimes. One of the incidents that left an especially strong impression on me was the case of university students in Kyoto who were involved in crimes of deceiving more than 200 women and pimping them out to brothels. I was already living in Kyoto when this incident happened, and I felt it was really horrible. In fact, when the Yakuza were in power, such incidents hardly happened. This is because this kind of business was the domain of the Yakuza, and amateurs who tried their hand on it were easily eliminated. In addition, the Yakuza were a well-organized group with a formal name, a known office location, and a clear hierarchy. In other words, if something happened, it was much more obvious who did it and where. There was a clear line between those who were in the underworld and those who weren't. I'm not saying that what the Yakuza were doing was right, but now with them gone, the world of outlaws in Japan have become a completely lawless place without any order. The Yakuza were originally formed by groups of people who were outcasts and were abandoned by society. The Yakuza were utilized conveniently by the politicians and companies during Japan's economic boom. And when the economy went into recession, they were suddenly eliminated, saying that they are a disgrace to the international community. And while society has succeeded in wiping out the Yakuza organizations, no measures were taken to prevent the crimes from happening in the first place, and to help those who were involved in Yakuza activity to reintegrate into society. As a result, only the order maintained by the Yakuza were lost. And now even ordinary young students who are supposed to be the future of Japan have become involved in crime. I am not suggesting that the Yakuza should be revived. However, I believe that Japan will never be able to improve its society until it makes an effort to deal with more drastic problems, such as poverty and disparity, instead of just taking remedial measures. Then lastly, today's conclusion. The origin of Yakuza, or the gang who engaged in gambling business, or those who set up street vendors at shrines and temples at festivals during the Edo period. After the end of World War II, the Yakuza started to grow rapidly by running black markets when supplies were scarce, and maintaining public order instead of the non-functioning police organizations. From here, as Japan underwent 19 years of the period of high economic growth, the golden age of the Yakuza arrived. During this time, in addition to acquiring funds through traditional crimes such as drugs and prostitution, they also expanded their activities to legitimate economic activities. However, this period did not last long, and as soon as the long period of economic stagnation began, the activities suddenly started to be restricted by the anti-gangster law, which was enacted in 1992. This law became stronger and stronger, and today anyone who just gets in contact with Yakuza can easily be considered a criminal. Compared to its glory days at the end of the 1990s, the overall number of Yakuza members is said to have shrunk to about 1/6, and the scale of business to about 1/20. However, the elimination of the Yakuza only led to the dissolution of the Yakuza organizational form, but expanded of crimes such as fraud, drugs, and prostitution. Now that the Yakuza is no longer a deterrent, ordinary students and others are becoming involved in dangerous crimes as hangure. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If this video helped you to deepen your understanding towards Yakuza and the current situation today, please hit the like button to help me boost this video to more people. And my goal is to achieve 1 million subscribers by January 2023, so your help would mean a lot. Also, please check out our sub-channel and membership through the link inside the description box. Thanks again, and I'll see you in my next video. どうもありがとうございました。So this is completely off topic, but my last name is actually Yamaguchi. You know, just like the Yamaguchi Gumi of the Yakuza, you know? And this is just me complaining, but since I was young, I literally hated people always, you know, whenever the Yakuza, the Yamaguchi group was on the news, there will be like these people in my class coming up to me and saying, so what did you do this time? Like, how are you feeling right now? I'm like, oh, it comes here. Here it is again, you know, and I just really, it's one of my bad memories when I was growing up as a child.